Welcome everybody to this statewide Zoom town hall meeting for the choral directors. I'm Brian Russell. I'm the All-State Choral Chair. State Choral Chair Adrian Mackin will be joining us here in a little bit. So the first part of today's agenda is to talk about the motion that has come out of the proposal about how we will incorporate freshmen in the 26-27 school year. If it's okay with everyone, I'd like to share my screen just so that we can kind of quickly go over what that motion is. All right, assuming everyone can see it. Let me kind of clean up my screen. All right. In the 26-27 academic year, we will add one high school choral ensemble to the list of all state ensembles, a 9-10 SATB, an 11-12 SATB, 9-12 SSAA, and a 9-12 TTBB. Each region will conduct regional auditions where 9th and 10th graders audition together and 11th and 12th graders audition together. Second tier will change. Rather than setting a quota, then we will take the top 24 or 20 or 30 or 26, depending on the cohorts, chairs. Each of those numbers from each region will be eligible for second tier. And then we will take the top chairs with guaranteed representation from each region as well. And that's kind of going all through here. Assuming that everyone's seen that, I'm just going through quickly here. And there's a minimum score to make sure. And there's the information about regional guaranteed representation. Probably the most important part is that each region will assemble an honor choir task force where each region will determine how to handle your region's auditions and your region's honor choirs. And then we will combine those three regional task force to become the All-State Choral Tiger Team, who will determine how we're going to change the All-State handbook, change second tier auditions, and we're also going to develop a middle school All-State Tiger Team who will then develop a proposal for implementing middle school All-State choirs in future years. And then special considerations that each region will maintain full autonomy on the size and makeup, and that, again, we will have these strategic steps that will ultimately create all-state choral ensemble opportunities at the middle school level. So that was me quickly going through the proposal, or I'm sorry, the motion that's been sent out. And today is all about making sure that everyone can make an informed decision when we meet at the caucus at TMEA here in just a few weeks. So what questions can I answer for folks? If there are none, let us pray. Hold, I'm just kidding. Well, no, that's what happens at my church when no one says anything. Concerns, questions, anything about this?
What are the major changes in this from what your process has been? Like, what's the things that a choir teacher is going to say, oh, wow, this is really different from what we've done?
I think by moving all state, this will be the same on the instrumental side. Moving all state to January means that second tier will have to be done, by middle of November or so. And so if that's the case, chances are regional events will have to be before that, and then regional auditions will have to be before that. And so it's the same thing that instrumental folks are going to have to go through, adjusting that timeline. But that's, again, why I think the most important part of this motion is establishing that task force Tiger Team to, make sure each region has input on how we're going to do that the best way.
Cool. I appreciate the Tiger Team reference. I had to track it down, but yeah, I know. Yeah, I got it.
That's a West Wing reference for anyone who is. Well, I think the reason that the committee that came up with this proposal wanted to have the Zoom calls a month ago and the Zoom calls today was that we know that caucuses don't need to be about just one thing. And so we wanted, this vote to make sure everyone had the opportunity to voice their concerns, to hear other people's concerns, to have that healthy dialogue, and for everyone to come into the caucus being able to make that informed vote. And so this is our opportunity to get that out there. If you have things that you have concerns over or things that you think are really strong about the proposal, now's the time to share that so that even those who can't be here today can have the benefit of hearing this dialogue so that they also can make an informed decision when they come here. Is there anything else that anyone would like to ask or share?
Could you clarify what the plan is for middle school ensembles? Is that being hopefully implemented in 2027 or looking further in the future?
So that's going to be under the purview of that middle school Tiger team that will end up being formed. The reason that this motion is coming into the fore is because there was a committee that worked for 7 or 8 months on how to do that and put it all together. And so right now we have voted to add middle school to the all-state ensembles, but there's been nothing actionable created from that original vote. So this task force will come together, figure out how it is we're going to build a middle school ensemble, and the timeline of that's going to be up to that committee and how they get that information out to the membership.
Hey Brian, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So after establishing the timeline, well, I'm sorry, establishing these Tiger teams, what is the timeline assume to kind of make a decision as far as when dates are to submit students who made it from, let's say, what's being referred to as first tier auditions to going around again to second tier auditions in preparation for, I'm assuming all of this being to hopefully take into effect by the 2027 January change. So what is the assumed timeline, or even if it's already written, for that to kind of take place?
So in the original proposal, it didn't make it into the motion because the motion is just like what we can vote on. But the original proposal gave some loose guidelines that by the end of the summer, the Tiger team ought to have the proposed changes to the all-state handbook and maybe a general framework for when regional auditions will happen and second tier auditions will happen. But so much that's going to be up to each region to determine when your regional auditions can happen. And that's going to be based on when you can get a venue for your regional honor choir. So each region is going to come up with their own timeline. If I had my preferences, all this I think needs to be in writing and approved by December of this year, because it's going to take a semester to get our directors, in the right place. And I mean, if we're talking about having auditions for regional honor choirs in, let's say, the third week of September, which I think is realistic, if not even a little bit late. Well, I think we ought to put out the audition music in April or May of, this coming school year. And so that means that we've got to make decisions on that stuff by this December. So while there's nothing set and nothing votable in terms of a timeline, I think it just makes sense that 2025 is this calendar year is our timeline to make it happen.
Okay, and so just to kind of follow up with that, let's say with like you said, 2020, September, first tier auditions happening around September. What would you see that second tier deadline being after the first tiers being in September? Again, in preparation for what will be assumed for January.
Right. What's in my mind is something like what some of our regions did during COVID, where there was a week-long window where students could upload their audition material, and then a two or three week window where directors could then listen to that material and adjudicate them. That's a similar format to what ACDA does for their honor choirs. And I think, if we're having all-state in January, we're going to need rosters set by Thanksgiving break at the latest. And so I could see us having last week of October, first week of November, the week where we upload materials, and then a couple of weeks for directors to then adjudicate them, and then we set the rosters.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit as we've been kind of looking at that timeline. I've been working with my Tennessee bandmasters hat on. a little bit with those, with our regional band instrumental associations. It looks like November 22nd, 23rd, that weekend is kind of the date that we're zeroing in on, as maybe that's when the deadline is going to be. So what you said, Dr. Russell, was right in line with that, right at that Thanksgiving break, or right before that. So, but I think that would be the date that you need to have in your head, is that November 22nd, 23rd date to have all state rosters.
Well, and also just to know what kids we're all taking, and then, hotel reservations and field trip requests and buses and all the things. So, I mean, I think it's got to be done by Thanksgiving break for sure. You're right, JR.
Okay, thanks for that too. And so even from there, do we know that with current adjustments in time, again, aiming for January and contracts, does that even allow us enough time in communication with kind of like the process that we have to go through now with the hotel of reserving hotels? Checks need to be in by which pretty much a little bit over a month of a date. And so if over that month of time isn't allotted, what secures those spots or even hotel rooms for schools based off of the contracting that has already been established?
Hey, Mr. Pinson. So this is Michael Chester. So yeah, so part of all of this we'll have to look at making sure that that obviously with our timelines and everything kind of being truncated, we're going to need to make sure that the hotel understands that we're going to have some flexibility on kind of like our check deadlines and that sort of thing. The beauty of it is that we can set that. That's not something that Opryland sets. That's something that TMEA can go to Opryland and say, okay, this is when we want our checks due, and that sort of thing. And that even may be a thing where, we might have to readjust some things by allowing checks on site, some things like that. So we do have a degree of flexibility, but all of that will kind of be determined once all the Tiger teams on both the instrumental side and the choral side and even the general music side kind of get together and kind of figure out those dates. Because the last thing that we want to do is try to make that process a headache. And I know that we're on such a real tight schedule there.
Thank you, Marcus. Great to hear that from you. So even from that, what is the timeline that we can assume to have that information to say that the hotels are even that Marriott is even going to allow that? Because I know even aside from the Gaylord, with Marriott as a company, they don't accept checks. They're cashless. They're essentially in terms of tangible things, contactless. And so when can we get that information to assure that we're actually even able to make these accommodations?
So I'm just going to go off the cuff here and say that hopefully, like I said, by my next January, the framework for how 2027 will work and all of those timelines and everything, hopefully we'll be able to have something tangible in place on that. Like I said, once we hear back from the committees, we can make adjustments with the people at Opryland. And the other thing to also consider is that because we don't have a lot of events that are taking place at the same time as our conference in January. The room space will certainly be open, and like I said, we've continued to educate them, because again, you have the people at Gaylord who work there, but then you've got the Marriott policies, and we have been finding that the people at Gaylord have been very accommodating at trying to address the unique needs of school groups. So that is something that's always going to be a constant dialogue and a continuous dialogue. But again, we'll try to get that information so that everybody knows going, a little bit before the 27 conference. And this would more than likely be April of 26. What the game plan is, so that everybody at conference in 26 knows exactly how we're handling things in 2027, so that we all come away with that knowing what the game plan is. That is the best of intentions right now, but again, once we get everything back from our regionals and how that's all going to operate, I think we'll have a more finite answer for you.
Thank you. And so are we able to, are you able to, not necessarily assure, but are we confident in Gaylord and Marriott making those accommodations, assuming now if my data is wrong here, that we're kind of essentially voting on this in a couple of weeks? So is there a way that we can have some type of pre-formal information to make the best informed decision that we can in moving forward to make these accommodations for schools, region students on whatever level that is most impactful in the most positively impactful way?
I'm confident that we can get that information, and we can also work with our partners at Conference Direct to ensure that, again, this transition going into 2027 and reservation of dates and the block cutoff and that sort of thing, that we can get that, because it would be dumb to say, okay, we're opening up the block in August and now we're going to close everything in October. I don't see us having to close a room block, to be quite honest with you. But again, that is definitely something that we will make sure to ensure that we have those opportunities. And likewise, we're also going to make sure that this information is communicated out in the best ways possible moving forward, because I know that communication is always a challenge with where things are right now. So rest assured, I'm not going to rest until we get that information.
So, hey, Dre, are you saying that your concern is that we might vote on this knowing that we're not going to know who makes All-State till mid-November, but then somehow we wouldn't be able to get rooms at All-State at that point? Like, is that your concern?
Correct.
Yeah. And so I can just tell you that, I mean, I remember a time, even since I've been at Stewart's Creek, which is 12 years, where I took a check with me to Opryland and gave it to him when I checked in. So, I mean, the idea that we had to, send out checks months in advance is a pretty new one. And, probably based mostly on convenience for directors and what we had available. So, I mean, Mr. Chester, are we confident in saying that if we don't know who makes All-State until Thanksgiving break, that we will be able to get a room in the TMEA room block at Opryland in that small turnaround time?
I am confident in that. And the other thing to address that question also about the check issue is simply because we've been having several issues with directors having to hold hotel rooms with their credit cards and credit cards getting charged. That we were trying this format of sending in the check ahead of time and working with their housing manager on that. Because again, I have heard from a few directors, it's not been a lot, but there have been a few. I was one of them, in fact, too, with our All-State students, where my credit card got charged and all I was doing was just holding the room. So we're trying to ensure that, that doesn't happen in the future. So that's why we've kind of tried this whole check ahead of schedule. But I am confident, and I will follow up also. I will take this concern and I will also follow up with our folks at Conference Direct and at Opryland about this concern, because I think you make a great point. And I don't see it being a problem, but I want to make sure that, again, you're not just relying on one person, but we do have confirmation on this.
And then, Dre, I think something else that we all will have to be good at is keeping ourselves organized for that first year that we have All-State in January. For example, most years we don't release the All-State rep till September or October. And then, once you know what students from your region made All-State, directors order the music, they get it sometime in December, and that's all well and good. Well, if our, auditions aren't until, mid-September, and they only have 6 weeks later until second tier, directors are going to have All-State music in hand. So one thing that I think we need to keep ourselves in terms of communication this first year that we do it is saying, hey, if you haven't already opened a purchase order to Opryland, go on and do that, so that as soon as you do know who made All-State, you're ready to give them that invoice, and you're ready to do this. And kind of being proactive in terms of the business side of things to keep ourselves, ready and for all the new stuff that'll be new to all of us. Mr. King.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the music thing, Brian, because I've been thinking through that. Michael, how does the band handle repertory and music? And is it really reasonable to ask directors to buy music just in case and then make photocopies until the real stuff comes in? Or if we're going to this timeline, why wouldn't the association commit to pre-purchasing this music so that it can be rapidly distributed and we would have a guarantee of its availability?
So Robert, I'm not really sure I understand your question. Are you saying that TMEA should buy all the choral music? Is that what you're saying? So that we're ready to go? I know on the instrumental side, it's a whole different game. So I
Well,
want to answer both questions.
I am asking the question, does band, do individual band students and directors have to purchase the music individually for the instrumental groups? And if not, then shouldn't choral have something similar to where we're not having to make these panic purchases and hope that we get things in time? There was a time when MTVA purchased, we used the proceeds from our profits from CPA. No, it was from Choral Festival. We ran a good profit on that, and we plowed that money back into the mid-state or all-state repertory and had it in advance. We wouldn't have to bankroll that. We could still charge members for the music we're providing and require them to procure it from the association and not get it individually. But
Yeah.
I mean, I have a single student in All-State this year, and I'm grateful that I got one, but I was pretty close to not having any. And so, yeah, which ensemble music is it I'm supposed to buy in case I might have somebody? I mean, it seems like I would need to be buying multiple ensembles music with a very real possibility that I won't have anybody in it.
To address that, I think that's a very interesting question, because to answer it on the instrumental side, the students do not purchase music just because it's not set up like the folios the way that choral music is set up. But I think that's a very fascinating idea, and I think it's worth exploring that if there is anything that TMEA can do, however we can do it, as long as we can figure it out financially. We obviously don't want to overcommit here, but yes, I think anything that we can do to remove that burden and to help our choral directors so that they're not having to scramble, I think it's something that we can definitely take to the board. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that.
There's also the potential to improve from our current practice, because we have had repertory that was available, was approved, and then when it got down to actually getting it, not everybody got it at the same time. And so if the association is procuring it, it takes care of it for everybody the same way. And if there's a problem, we can ditch that song.
Yeah. And
So
I guess, oh, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, I'm about to catch a plane, so I've been not in view, but I like your idea actually, Robert. So are you asking, could the association pre-purchase all the music for the choirs, and then the directors would purchase that music from the association? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's one way to do it. That would resolve the, do I need to buy a single copy hoping I have somebody make it, and then technically illegally copy it until I get their legal copies in. Yeah.
Yes, that way we would have a copy for every student, and if there was a tune back ordered, we would know early enough to talk with the conductor and substitute a new tune.
Yes.
I actually really like this idea.
Yeah, and I would also say, Robert, we would need to kind of figure out also too on that the best means of distribution. And I don't know if it's like the association purchases it, but then we hand sets over to each region. I think there's many different ways that we could skin that cat. So I think we should circle back on that for sure. And I think we should add that to the kind of the purview, if that's okay with you, Dr. Russell, just to add that to the Tiger team things of considerations. That's a great point, Rob.
You know, Robert, like currently we give out mid-state music at mid-state auditions once we find out who made mid-state. Assuming that there's enough time between our regional event and second tier, which who knows if there is, maybe we could do it the same way. We could give it out, at the regional event. Here are the kids who are eligible for All-State, and we give you their All-State music at mid-state. But again, we don't know if that's going to work until we know exactly when mid-state's going to be. But we could also ship, we'd have to figure out all that stuff. So
Dr. Russell, just for someone uninformed like I am, when do we typically know what the all-state rosters are?
So right now it is at second tier, which is the end of January. And if they pass second tier, then they were an all-state person, they know they made it, and then alternates are typically informed in the next week or so, week and a half after that.
Thank you.
The way it'll
Yep.
work, it'll probably be November.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate
Hey,
it.
Dr. Russell, question. I was one of those people who was in all-state choir. I was a good trumpet player, but I never made all-state band. So I was always in all-state choir and I loved it. So, but I don't remember this. I remember second tier. I remember going to the rehearsals and having to sing and do all that. Typically, how many students don't pass the second tier?
It depends on the year. There have been some where close to 35 or 40% didn't pass.
Oh my
And
word.
then there are some times when it's 1% didn't pass, you know. I think as we've gotten better at second tier and we've gotten better at calibrating with our directors that this is pass fail and more about are they ready to walk into rehearsal, we've gotten better at, you know, realistically setting expectations on what a pass is. And so as we've done that, our students have become more successful because directors are preparing them for that. And they've also been more successful because our directors know what that means.
Is the second tier, I'm thinking in East Tennessee, I think we did it in small ensembles, but that was, you know, I don't want to say how many years ago, but it was a long time. How do you do the second tier audition?
Well, currently it's in octets, but
That's what I thought.
in the proposal, we're going to move to it being an online system.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian, can you speak to how sight reading online works?
No. There is a new format that TMEA is looking at called Snap Audition, and that is integrated with Sight Reading Factory. And so I'm hesitant to give many specifics on that because it's still something that we haven't looked terrifically into. Part of what the Tiger team is going to have to do is figure out, for regional auditions, do we do it in person? Do we do regional auditions virtually, but do sight reading in person? Or do we try out the Snap Audition thing and make sight reading a part of it? If we do we count sight reading as much, knowing that there might be glitches and all the things, you know, like all that stuff will be student centered and under the purview of the Tiger team to figure out what that looks like for each region. For second tier, it's not as big of a deal because there's still no sight reading at second tier. So in terms of sight reading, that'll be up to each region to determine how to make that happen, because the region will determine if we move to online for their regional auditions or not.
Hey, Dr. Russell, can I also add on that? And JR, correct me if I'm wrong here, if I speak out of turn, but right now TMEA is using Snap Audition for the instrumental chair audition. So whereas in the instrumental side, we don't have a second tier, we just basically have the chair auditions basically, so that they get slotted. When we were in our talks with the Snap team, they do have the capability of doing sight reading, and you have different options. You can upload your own sight reading as far as like your PDFs are concerned. You can randomize them, or everybody does the same thing. You can also integrate it with Sight Reading Factory and set, you know, the parameters with Sight Reading Factory. So TMEA is not using the Snap Audition in the capacity for sight reading. We're only using it just to see how like the upload process works. From a judge standpoint, the beauty of what this does is everybody, at least on the instrumental side, everybody is required to do a video submission. So, and there are guidelines that TMEA has developed as far as we need to see your hands and we need to see, you know, your mouth and that sort of thing. But on the back end for the judges, the beauty of it is that a judge is basically get a link to their email address, and then in that they set up their Snap account, and then they judge only audio excerpts, because on the back end, we turn off all the videos. We have access to the videos for verification purposes, but the judges only get to see just, you know, clarinet 1, clarinet 2, clarinet 3, and then they basically get to put their rankings right then and there in the program. They don't have to download anything. It's actually a pretty sophisticated platform, and it's not super expensive as far as the cost of it. So there are other state associations that are using it. There are also like smaller regional associations that are using it too. So we've been very happy with the customer service part of some things. You know, it's not something that was just created, but it's been on the market for a little while. So far, keeping fingers crossed, I've not heard anything from Carter, but it sounds like things are going well. JR, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that's what I.
I can tell you that in discussing with the regional band association, I can actually speak really. I feel like about what MTSBOA is looking at doing is using Snap Audition or something very similar to it, but we think probably Snap Audition to do a pre-screening, and then actually bringing students in to do sight reading, to do basically a second tier of sight reading to seat in our ensembles. The thing that we've discovered with Snap Audition as far as sight reading goes, if you use Sight Reading Factory, it randomizes every time for those students. So you would be judging their ability to sight read, but everybody gets a different piece of music based off parameters and key signature and rhythms. And then so there's that aspect of it. Or like Michael said, we could upload sight reading into it, but then you have our kids taking pictures of it. Are they sharing pictures of it? Is it becoming where we're not getting a true snapshot of their sight reading ability? So I will say, talking to Carter, that it has worked out really well as far as getting judges' scores and all of that put in. So I think that part of it's been a success as far as using that program. So I think it's something that we can definitely look at throughout the state, even maybe for general music, Lindsay.
Robert, you had your hand up?
Yeah. On the I'm kind of I have a checkers brain living in a chess world, I think. But I like this direction of being able to use the technology of the online platforms and eliminate potentially some barriers for some students who might have scheduling conflicts. I am less inclined to encourage us to do both stages online, at least to start. It might be after the experience with it a couple of years on one of the stages that we discover, why did we ever think about not doing both? But it seems that committing to both all on the front end before we really experience it may incur unnecessary risk. And the sight reading thing gives me a little heartburn. I had wondered before JR mentioned that, is sight reading at second tier? Because second tier seems easier to do in person, since we're screening specific repertory, and it would be fewer people and doing something sight reading then. Anyway, I just would say one or the other in person seems prudent to me.
What I can say to that is the fact that instrumental side is already using Snap Audition for their seating placement. That's pretty much identical to what we would do for our second tier, assuming second tier is not going to have sight reading. It would just be uploading and then assessing those recordings. In terms of the sight reading, I know one thing Garrett has talked about in the Middle Tennessee portion is, do we want to kind of pilot an online version of our mid-state auditions this year? And something that makes a lot of sense to me would be if we were to pilot it with sight reading, but then maybe not count the sight reading this year, in order to still incentivize the sight reading. But then if there are issues with it, it wouldn't penalize any students. But that's just me talking off the top of my head. And so I guess what I'm saying is, I think there are ways that if we decided to go down the road, we could still test it and have models that we could go back and then change as we need before we run in there that first year and make it happen.
I think as long, and I know we shouldn't brainstorm too far in the weeds on this, but I think you could even separate sight reading from either of the others, almost like you have CPA on different days and different sites. You could have stations like you go in for your appointment, and it could be multiple days, and because it would be randomized, but in person. This is a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like drug testing. It's got to be in person, or
Sure.
you're going to beat the system. But it doesn't have to be all on the same day.
I love that. Other questions?
Hey, and just on that, again, not to, just like Robert said, not to go too far into the brainstorming of it, is that something that we can ensure access to all regions in terms of affordability? Is that something that the state is providing for regions, or would it be left up for regions to obtain this software or X, Y, and Z? And so in those cases, in terms of timelines of accessibility, what is the goal, or the plan rather, to streamline those and kind of make them connect at some point?
Mr. Vincent, I would say that probably the thing that we would have to do is we would have to work that out with the regionals. I think that would be something where, if we can get a good, solid, I don't know, for lack of a better term, bulk pricing, so to speak, something that, includes accessibility for all of the regionals. And if it's something that within our budget, if the state can pay for it, great. Or if we can do a combination of a little bit from, a majority of the portion paid by TMEA with some of it paid by the regionals. The other thing to also consider is that this is something that could also be used, access for, other events and that sort of thing, as people become familiar with it, or they like it, or if they don't like it, that's something that we also have to contend with. But, and again, I don't want to speak for Joel or JR. But I do know that that's a big thing, is really trying to increase, with our regional associations, really trying to work more together to help in the cost sharing or the cost savings, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so can we kind of be, I guess I'm asking for another level of reassurance that we can get some more information about this prior to, all state again in a few weeks, where we're essentially voting on all of this, to get some type of preliminary information, again, in terms of timeline and communication, because there's a lot of decisions being made without background communication, or not communication, sorry, information, excuse me. And so I'm just asking for as much information preeminently as possible, to make an informed decision about, how, even personally for me, how I want to vote for the betterment of not only students in my classroom, but across my association, across the state that I live in and love. So can we get some type of assurance again on a timeline of which, or a point of which we can get some of that information to us about affordability and cost, and how we plan to move forward, being that we essentially have to vote on it?
So Dre, you're wanting to make sure we know if Opryland's going to accept a check with a 6-week turnaround time, and you're wanting to know if TMEA is going to provide Snap Audition for second tiers.
In addition to, essentially, like Robert was saying earlier, it would essentially TMEA statewide as association purchasing the music so that it's accessible for those students as well. So yes, to answer your question, but that as well.
So we have a 6-week turnaround time. I think TMEA is going to have to provide Snap Audition for second tier in the same way that they provide it for chair placement for instrumental side. So I think that's taken care of. That's answered. In terms of the regional auditions, that's going to be up to each regional, group in order to determine if they're going to go virtual for their regional auditions or not. So I don't think TMEA can give us anything by April 13th on whether they're going to help, or what kind of, thing they're going to work out with each region in terms of software for, regional auditions, nor is each region going to know what kind of software they want to use by April 13th. So I don't know that we'll know that, but I'm sure we'll know about the 6-week turnaround time. We already know about, let's see here, Snap Audition for use in second tier. So what else are you wanting clarification on? As far as music. Yeah, in terms of the music, that's a good point. I don't know that affects affordability very much, because I think what's on the table is that the schools would still pay for the music.
Yes.
We're just trying to find a way for TMEA to have it in our hand in time. And if we're just talking about a cost neutral thing, as All-State Choral Chair, I'll just make sure that that happens.
I think we can do that. Um, I think one of the things we can do is once we have conductors sign the contracts, we can ask for their programs, which will give us enough time to order that music ahead of time.
Oh yeah, and Joel, we have their music months before all that. We'll have their music by February of this year.
Right, exactly. So I don't think that's a problem getting that ordered. Like Michael said, we'll have to determine how we get that to the regionals and how you distribute it in your individual regionals, and then repaying TMEA for the music. And as far as the second tier auditions using the program, of course, we would do that. We already do it with instrumental, so we would make that available to the choral division as well.
So Dre, does that answer all your questions? Like the 6 weeks?
Absolutely. Yep, I'm good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, great.
Well, if there are no more questions about the motion, I hope everyone feels good about, going in with your vote and knowing, everything you need to know in order to do this. This is a vote for how to add freshmen in 2027. The motion is pretty clearly delineated on what it does approve and what it doesn't approve. And so I hope everyone feels good about all the different layers of that specific thing. If there's nothing else, Mr. Macklin, what else is on our agenda for today? Mr. Macklin, is it someone in the chat? Oh, there we go. Oh, he says he's not in a place where he can talk. Well, if there's nothing else on the agenda, then I don't know that I have anything else. Does anyone have anything?
Brian, I apologize if y'all discussed it before I arrived. Was there discussion about the ability to vote for the on the proposal if you're not personally in attendance at the caucus?
There wasn't. The way we're going to handle this vote is the vote is going to be done electronically during the window of the caucus. So everyone is going to have the opportunity to vote whether you're in person at the caucus or whether you're not able to come to the caucus. So if you can imagine, when you walk into the caucus, if you're in person, we will have a copy of the motion there just to make sure that everyone has it. And on the back, there will be a QR code you can scan. There will be a link put in the Whova app that you can click on. And that same link will be sent out via email to all of the regions from your presidents a week or so in advance of the caucus. That link won't go live until the caucus begins, and there will be a time limit within the caucus to vote on it.
Okay, so it's a very narrow window, and if you're not in attendance and you get distracted, tough, right?
Well, so since November, like the proposal has said, we are going to vote on this at the caucus. And the motion also says it's being brought up at the caucus. So by doing it electronically and opening it up to everyone, even those who aren't there, we're gaining access to it for sure, but we're still staying within, what the paradigm has been since it was first introduced.
Yeah, and I guess I'm proposing that we broaden the concept of what the caucus is, since there are people who can't attend the conference because they don't have students in All-State, which is one of the things TMEA is attempting to address to make it more accessible for more teachers by adding freshmen in middle school and other things, so that adding a few more hours window to avoid a gotcha to somebody, and this is a big change because in the past the caucus has been it, and I think it's disenfranchised the people who just, in some cases, because they didn't care enough, no doubt, but in some cases, out of their control, could not be in attendance, and and unless we assume the discussion at the caucus is not going to be meaningful toward what anybody's vote would be, then the potential that maybe there's something said or shared in that in-person meeting that could inform on a choice and that others could learn from others who were in attendance at the meeting. So I think if we were going to err on this one, I would recommend that we err on the side of being a little more open than being really tight, dare I say, a little legalistic on the window of time that you can vote.
And Robert, what do you think about something like through the end of the conference?
I love it.
And that way we could still, have it there. Does something like that work?
I think so. And it provides for the opportunity that people have conversations even after that hour or so of the caucus, and a chance for whatever side of whatever issue you're on, the chance to try and persuade someone to see it a different way, which I think is I think the more dialogue we encourage, the better. I think there's to some extent, there's some frustration by some that, why, what's the point? The decisions are already made. Whether that's true or not, if it's the perception, then it robs us of engagement by people who need to take ownership for the future of the association.
And here's what I'll say to that. If the executive committee, wants to extend it through the end of the conference, of course, there's wisdom in that, and I think there's good things to come from that. I think it ought to be a pretty tight window, because, a month ago to the day, we had Zoom calls for every, region. Today we're having one. The motion was first sent out in November, and again, a couple of times. I mean, so in terms of communication and giving people the opportunity to, talk this out and have the discussions, there have been literally months. And so for me, I would rather by the end of the caucus have a up or down vote. But I also see your point that if we've had it open for 6 months, what's 3 more days going to hurt? So I can get behind that too.
Hey, Brian, might
Hey.
I add this? That window is going to be, I see what both of you are saying. That window is going to be tight because we're having choir concerts and orchestra concerts and caucus meetings happening during those times. And so I would be, and JR's on here, he can agree with me. I'll be happy to take it to the executive committee to extend it, even if we just wanted to extend it through Friday evening. And I see what Robert is saying, because there is value in being able to talk about the discussion that occurs in the caucus, being able to dialogue about that and maybe see something differently than you perceived or heard during that dialogue. So I'd be happy to talk to the executive committee about that. And then our chief executive, Mr. Chester, I just texted him, and there's a possibility that we could set up Zoom in the caucuses as well for those who are not in attendance. And that might be a way to get even more input. Those people wouldn't have quite the ability to interject as in-person people, but they would have the ability to dialogue after the caucus with people via phone about what went on in the caucus. My greatest concern, and I'm gonna get shot for using these words. My greatest concern is, I want you to understand that this executive committee and TMEA is not tone deaf to what the choral division wants to do. And we want to make sure we get it right for you. This is a major change for you. And someone who was an all-state choir, taught the Chattanooga Boys Choir for 10 years, did church music for 35 years. I understand voice change and all those challenges. And so I want to make sure that when we do approve that proposal, that it's the proposal that the majority of our choral music educators want. Thank you.
Hey, Brian, question just to be sure. And then talking about the voting and the link specifically being sent out, I want to be sure you did say that that link will be sent to the different regional presidents for them to send to their membership, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Do we know just so I guess so we know like when would that be sent? What is the timeline proceed for that? So as we're preparing, the conversations of hopefully being able to wait, because I completely agree with Robert of waiting, let's say like to the end of the week for everybody to be able to review videos. I'm glad that it was presented that the Zoom can be there and things, because I believe that since it is a caucus meeting and we have, like you said, had those previous caucus meetings where they've been recorded, people have been able to access those, kind of go back, even if they are in person, to kind of process the information that's being said. When would that link be able to be sent out to the regional presidents to then make sure that it has time to be disseminated amongst their individual regional memberships?
The link will be sent out about a week before All-State in terms of the link to vote.
I don't know what the security on that will be, if it like uses the email that you use for your membership or something. I wonder if it solely being pushed is enough, and whether or not it needs to be posted somewhere where it could be pulled. Obviously not where someone in another country can just vote on it, but if there can be security on that, I would suggest it be available to be pulled, not just pushed through the association. It gets caught in the spam filter, and
Sure.
somebody's cut out of the action. Also, I want to echo what Dre just said, that I think having those Zooms available from previous meetings, if you couldn't be in attendance but could watch it, I want to commend that. And to your point, Brian, I know there's been a lot of warning about this caucus, and I think in future years a tighter window might be appropriate. It's just that allowing virtual voting, not just in-person voting, is something never done for the caucus before. And so up to this point, if someone has been asleep at the wheel, it's been on the assumption that, well, if I'm not going to be at the caucus, it's not going to matter. I don't have a voice. And now all of a sudden, good news, you do have a chance to have a voice in this. So I think another reason to be a little more liberal in the accessibility this go around.
Anything else?
Is that doable though, Brian? Or I don't know if that's a Brian question or a Mr. Chester question or whoever, where the link is actually pullable versus being sent out, and where it could be posted to be pulled from. Is that an option that's available? Because I'm not quite sure, but I think that like the last time when we voted for the presidentship and all of those things, that was a link that was sent via email, and there were some issues with people kind of like having access to the voters link and all of those things. Because I know I myself had to go twice to the information desk to be sent the link to vote, I think, for whatever that vote was, if that was the presidential vote. But nonetheless, do we have access to doing something like that to where it is pullable from a website?
I'm going to tell you that everything that I post, that I send out and push out in terms of All-State is on tmea.org. So we'll just make sure it's there.
Okay, thanks.
Forgive me if this has already been resolved, but I just want to speak up as somebody who I'm active in my regional association. I'm one of the area representatives. But for the past 3 years, I have been given a duty to watch over one of the choirs during the choral caucus. So I'm very active in my regional association, but I've never been given the opportunity to be active at the state level. And just to be another voice on the idea of extending the voting and extending that table, if I miss that caucus and I wasn't able to attend this meeting, which obviously I am, I would miss out on that information and would really value the chance to discuss it with my colleagues the following Friday during the conference. So just to put my hat in there for extending the timeline for voting and also keeping it online would be Just wanted to put in my 2 cents.
Yeah, you guys are starting to convince me. Not that it matters, they're going, but you're making annoyingly good points. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, make sure to buy your merch by March 27th. It's in the chat.
Hey, Dr. Russell, let me throw out a couple other things. Just that caucus meeting is on Thursday night at 8 o'clock of conference. So looking forward to seeing you all there. Also, just want to make sure and remind you of the performing ensembles at TMEA. So on Thursday, Lee University and ETSU. On Friday, Dyersburg and Bearden. I think that's at 1. And then at 3:30, Farragut, Stewart's Creek, and Collierville. And then on Saturday at 9, the treble choir concert. So wanted to make sure that you remember those, and like Brian said, making sure that you order some merchandise. Lindsay said earlier that if you order that by when, Lindsay?
March 27th.
Then that you'll have it by conference, and can wear that around proudly. And yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody in a few weeks. So it's right around the corner.
Robert?
The caucus, you say it's at 8. I seem to recall there have been some years where, is it limited? Is it an hour limit, or if conversation goes beyond, is it one of those things where we're going to be run out of the room, or we can continue the conversation?
I think I will answer that because Debbie Burton is the other band director at Stewart's Creek, and she is doing all the scheduling. I believe you guys will have the room. I'm going to pull that up right now.
I got it, Michael. You're the last group of the night,
you.
so debate into the morning.
Stay as long as you'd like.
Yeah. If I come back at midnight and y'all are still debating this, I'm kicking you out, though.
I would just want to share also on the schedule for Friday night, there is a folk dance night for anyone. It could be band or choir but it's really for the teachers and the students and anyone around that wants to kind of build community. Also gives your students something to do until 9 p.m. So if anyone's interested, everyone is welcome to that. It is not just a general music thing.
And by the way, if you all don't know, Lindsay Mullins is the TMEA General Music Chair and is doing a fabulous job. And she actually just had the General Music Zoom was at 2 p.m. So we've been hopping around different Zooms. So we appreciate everybody's time on this one for sure.
Just since we've got lots of people here, I originally said we would have a paper ballot in case Wi-Fi didn't work at the caucus. But if we're extending that deadline beyond the hour of the caucus or whatever, then I think the paper ballot goes away and everyone's just doing the online portion of it, knowing that at some point we're going to run into good Wi-Fi and connectability. So I want to put that out there so that I don't want people to walk in there saying, well, we said we're going to have a paper ballot. But I think if we have a larger window, then online is the way to make it equitable among everybody.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Brian. And just to kind of throw it out there, because my thing is I'm not against a lot of what's going on. I'm just about timeline. I just want to throw out the option of possibly that not whatever voters links that's available is not, does not close until per se like Sunday afternoon sometimes, just to give way for any type of errors, whether it be, Wi-Fi, somebody's traveling back home to their region, whatever the timing is. Like, I think that Sunday afternoon is a good, because we're meeting now on a Sunday afternoon. So I think that is a pretty, fair like deadline to set for access to everyone. Is that something that we can at least consider?
Yeah, there's nothing that's going to be done on Saturday. The only thing that, that we might want to do is push out a notification on the Hoover app before the conference closes that the vote passed or didn't. But we can easily do that via email as well. So like there's no reason not to do that. And we could just say Sunday at 11:59, the vote closes. And that way it does give people the opportunity, if they're having problems in Nashville with their cell phone, they can do it when they get home. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
And Dr. Russell, you envision that opening at the end of caucus meeting? Like
That
you'll
also
send out
makes,
the link. You'll send out the link before that, but then it will open at the end of caucus meeting or on Thursday night, and then we'll keep it open until Sunday at noon.
sure. Or I think Sunday, 11:59 PM. Like give them, give them all day Sunday in case, because
Okay.
some people aren't going home until after the orchestra concert, band concerts on Sunday, you know?
Cool. Okay. I'm just trying to think if I get roped into helping build some kind of technology for that. So
Yeah. Well, the original proposal, was talking about it makes sense for each region to move to the same format of all state choirs. And after the February 23rd Zoom meetings, that became clear that that was not something that needed to be in the motion. So what I love about this process that we're doing here is that the actionable steps are being formed by us talking all this stuff out. And I came into this meeting, I just, had a conversation with Robert, earlier today, that I thought the vote needed to happen during, JR, your head's going away. That I had, that I wanted everything to, happen during the caucus. And after hearing all these great points, I'm now of the opinion, no, we should extend it through Sunday. That makes a ton of sense. So I love the fact that we have all this input toward how this is going to happen and building it the way that it needs to be built. So that's why we do these things. And that's why we get lots of smart people in Zoom rooms to talk through stuff. So hooray for collaboration. Any closing thoughts?
enjoyed spending some time with you.
Likewise. All right, everybody. I will send an email out to the regional presidents soon with the recording of this one, just so that everyone can have it. And it'll be on the TMEA YouTube page. All right, goodbye, everybody.